mandate experience in life. I'm very passionate about this space of life skills and values until I become very emotional when I hear people misusing the use of life skills.
And I'll give you an example. I know most of the time you have had parents complaining, and I'm not supporting parents or teachers. I'm just going to give you this scenario that the teacher tells them to cook food and send photos. And so I'm always conflicted. What was the intention of the teacher? Was it to show the photo of the food, or was there something deeper? But if you analyze it, the essence is not how the food is made. No one will ever interview you whether you make a very nice meal or not. But when this child was supposed to go make rice at home, ideally the parent needed to give the child maybe 120 shilling. They go to the market together, they do the process of budgeting, they decide what to buy. 120 shillings is not enough currently. They make very critical decisions, right? Then they come back home, they work together and make the meal. They take the photo, take to school. Ideally, on the other hand, the teacher was supposed to wait for the child and ask, what was happening? Did you have conversation with your child? With your mother? Yes or no? So if there was conversation, communication is being nurtured, isn't it? Because communication and collaboration is one of the competencies at a CBC. If the money was not enough and the child said, I had to decide to buy 2 tomatoes rather than 5. So there was critical thinking that happened in the process, and the problem was solved by deciding I'm going to buy 1 tomato. And that is what we expect. But what is happening is that my cousin, I have a cousin, so I know a bit about the activities here. Even my niece come with the activity, wash utensils, we take photos on Sunday because we want to finish things, take the photo to school, and my cousin gets exceeding expectations, my niece gets exceeding expectations. So both as a parent have failed, and the teacher on the other side has failed, right? But what probably is the issue is not the failure or not the failure, it's because we don't understand these things. I've heard even on television people talking about the activities and the life skills, the cooking, the making of the scarecrow, and all those sorts of things, and people are very bitter about it. It's not because, it's because they don't know what you're looking for as an educator. Even us, I remember I was telling them we went for an immersion in Kilifi, and even with my colleagues, and we talk about these things, and we were supposed to come back and say, what did you learn from the community? And people, what life skills did you see? People would say cooking, doing things, the activities themselves, rather than what are these life skills? Because no one will examine you or in any interview. You will sit and someone asks you, do you know how to cook ugali rice or something? But in the process of doing all these things that we are telling our children to do, they get critical thinking, problem solving, they get self-efficacy, learning to learn, name all of them, all those skills. So we need to really find ways as educators to educate people then on what is important. If you read the National Strategic Plan, I was just downloading it, it has talked about life skills as solutions to most of these problems. When you talk about gender-based violence, the only thing, if you read the policy nicely, it talks about the value of life skills as a solution to gender-based violence. The value of life skills as a solution to early marriages. The policy that was presented, the other meeting we had, which was hosted by Intright, which was attended by CEP, the presentation that was made on the policy of health and education, the first chapter was on life skills. The life skills is a solution. But we are still not able to talk about what life skills are we, what are these things. And until we're able to do that, we will be fighting the teachers, we'll be fighting the parents, we'll be fighting the curriculum, we will be a lost nation.
The way my colleague has said about collaboration, I wanted to say the aspect we need to define the negative part of collaboration and the positive part. Above all, I'm also looking at, I also like the last part, call for action. Because when you were making your presentation, what was coming to my mind I was looking forward to see the recommendations. But I love the bit, the air, that call for action, because it is calling us to come up with to embrace the issue of education.
So we encourage parents to know that things have changed, that the world we are now wants people who are asking, curious, ready to learn and not do those sort of things. So I think we have a bigger responsibility, including our leaders. Because leadership plays a very important role. We watch them on TV every day, we hear what they are saying. If they say something that is not good to the learners or to the children, they will think, that is it, that is what we need to be doing as a country. So how do we make them accountable for their words and what they do and what they say? Because I think it's important.
So my question will just be to all of us, what are these current issues that you'd like, if we were to talk about education in a nutshell, what are these current issues and what can you say about them? I don't want to direct your thinking. I want to hear from you that when we look at and focus on basic education in this case, because that is our area of interest, looking at basic education, what are these current issues and what can you say about those current issues? We'll try to be as brief as possible. I hope so that we then leave room for almost everyone to say something. So if you can say a point or two, it will be good and be direct to the point so that all of us can have a room to share. I will be very particular because I would like to hear from the unions what they have to say. There's so much going on, and maybe you can start us off.
Now, you can imagine a researcher who has gone down, talked to the students, and still there are some things that they are not able to get clear. What about that very teacher who is down there, who has never interacted with this thing? What are they going to say? Those are the things that we need to come clear. And the ministry also needs to come clear, so that at least we don't have a lot of, we are not beating about the bush. We are trained teachers, but we are trained to handle different things. This is not what we are trained to handle. So we need something very clear about it. I think also the other thing that came clear in
Elimu Yetu Coalition stand firm. Very well. Mambo ya boarding school si hapo kusema watoto wasiende shule. Watoto waende shule. Kama sijiwezi anaenda shule kwa yule na nini. Another thing you do, sijui kwa vile unasema hivi. Walimu wana walk 10 kilometers. 10. Even if you have people on a machine, you need to change one. Sasa yeye mwalimu ni mwelewa kupata sana 10 kilometers kwenda kurudi. Akifika huko amechoka. Anaenda kusomea kama private kwa class. Anaenda kulala. So we are want to have competent teachers because they are tired. Not that they are competent trained, but they are tired of working.
But when you go down to the schools, we have existing ways on how we can support inclusion. As we have this discussion, the assumption is we are going to come up with asks that we are going to put forward to the government to be able to lobby with them so that we don't leave anyone behind, including these children with the different exceptionalities.
Thank you. The rapid project, that took 3 months, and you know, within 3 months we will not have even achieved outcomes. So those are some of the things, and then we need inclusion when it comes to this assessment, because we also have children with disabilities that we need to take care of. Then I have another issue across the country about the ASAL region. In Kenya, yes, currently we are talking about 23 ASAL regions. When we talk about teachers, yes, we are happy the government is really working hard. There is employment of teachers. Right now we have advertised and they are increasing now the number of teachers. But within our ASAL regions, those regions, we have something we talk about allowance. We call it allowance for the teachers. And when we talk about this allowance, we usually, for the teachers in difficult, we call it in difficult areas. Hardship allowance, yeah, hardship allowance. You go to a county, you find a certain sub-county, there is hardship allowance. Then another sub-county in the same county does not have hardship allowance. What happens? Will the teachers be ready to be transferred to that area? So there is no equity. Yes, it is in Assam, but we lack equity. So we need, if it is hardship allowance, the government of TSC, we should have harness like, if it is hardship allowance in that county is Assam, let's the whole county have the hardship allowance. Because even TSC officials, for those people who have been visiting different counties, you find even the TSC directors, they have great challenge because teachers are trying, they don't want to go to this area because it does not have hardship allowance. All of them want to concentrate or to be within the areas where there is hardship allowance. So we also need that to be looked at, and might be at the end of it, the issue of pre-primary. We said that pre-primary, currently within our new curriculum, within CBC, we are calling it early years of education. But now, our pre-primary is devolved as per our constitution. But now we need a framework, because if they are supposed to, they are the same who will go to grade 1. Should we not harness might be whatever the teacher is offering across the counties? Because if the pre-primary, it is within the counties, but we need to harness everything across the whole country, and maybe what we can do there is have a quality standard framework that will guide all the teachers in the primary. Thank you.
Given that right now the primary schools are receiving, each child is receiving about 1,400, I think. And in secondary school, each child is receiving 22,000. Now, you see the difference is quite big. So if it is domiciled still in the primary school, and we have students of primary school receiving this amount, and students of secondary school receiving a different amount, yet they are in the same compound, and they have the same facilities, maybe except maybe if laboratories will be there, will have to be built. And of course this one will also be affected by the management. That is another issue which I think people have mentioned. Will we have two management systems in the same school, whereby we have the primary school being run by the head teacher as usual, and then we have a principal running the junior secondary school in the same school?
When you look at some of the challenges that we have talked about in the education sector, which are many, even as we appreciate them, the most important thing is for the government to show leadership in all these things. When you're in a crisis, when resources are not available, if you show leadership, you can be able to work with many partners. The other day, the principal secretary makes an announcement on boarding schools out of the blues. There was no consultation. It was just a roadside announcement. But all of us, even if the idea is good, but we understand the impact. It's not something small. I think most parents, especially those with children in boarding schools, they're already thinking now, what am I going to do? Why? The idea could be okay, but I think it was a one-sided declaration. Now this is what we foresee there might be a crisis. This statement is made now and it's made by the ministry. Presidential Working Party has not released the report. What if it thinks otherwise and comes up with a different pronouncement? We go back to a sector that appears to have a confusion. spirit of bringing people together, all stakeholders together within the sector, I think the ministry can begin by releasing the state of education. I would really love to see a situation whereby the current cabinet secretary stands and provides the status in terms of education in the country. But then he can't do that. Do you know why that is a problem? He cannot do that because that's not his work. That work, though provided for by the Basic Education Act, is actually the work of the National Education Board. Under Section 5 of the Basic Education Act, National Education Board does not exist to date, though it's provided for in the law. So we can ask the question, why do we have institutions within the Basic Education Act that are very critical? Because aside from that, this body also is supposed to advise the Cabinet Secretary on policy issues. And I also think the tragedy of it all is that this is the principle of county education boards. Because county education boards are only but agents of the National Education Board. The question you can always pose, can an agent exist without a principle? So that is what is within the sector. We have got agents existing without principles. The principle is the National Education Board, which is non-existent. Now, it could be the one that would be providing a state of education, and probably it would have helped, because the spirit within which it was established was to come up with a neutral voice in terms of the education sector. Let me read Section 5(3) of the Basic Education Act, which states, the National Education Board shall generate and cause to be published an annual report on the state of education and service delivery in the country. That's a huge task. Maybe if they would be around, all these things would make sense. Let me summarize things. We have talked about a lot of stuff. First, I want to reiterate and actually thank the efforts that are currently made in terms of addressing access and quality within the sector. However, our call to the government is to commit to addressing the challenges that we have. That commitment, unfortunately, we do not see it. We see it like actions. In that line, the ministry should provide guidelines to inform transition to secondary, to junior secondary next year. It's less than a month. The guidelines are not out. We have a lot of questions. Can we expect a smooth transition? It's not going to be smooth. It's going to be rough and complex. That's what January will be. Because if the guidelines are not there at the moment, we shouldn't expect something simple. We are calling upon the ministry to engage in participatory processes. During this period of healing planning, I mentioned about the importance of harmonizing our plans. Otherwise, there is a risk of the sector looking confused. Like if you remember around 2018, when CBC had just begun, the government was saying this one day, the following day it was saying another in terms of CBC. Then it was very clear that the sector there was confusion within the sector. The government commits to accountable and transparent implementation of intended government projects. I've talked about Clean Bill that is coming, a major project. In the face of the current drought, the government implements a comprehensive school feeding programs in drought-affected areas so that to ensure children are actually in school. We are also saying the Presidential Working Party to address this issue of the NEB, National Education Board, and even ESCAM, settle that matter in its report once and for all. If those institutions are not critical within the sector, come back to stakeholders. Let us review the law, but with justification. Why they are not established and yet they are in the law. But one way that can help us is through the Presidential Working Party. They need to settle that question because these are very, very critical institutions within the education sector. And when talking about the report of the Presidential Working Party, they went across the country picking the views of the citizens. It is only fair that they come to us, get feedback, get that report validated by education stakeholders before releasing it. Because when they just release it, it's like a law, it's like an edict. You have to do this. We want that report to be interrogated by education stakeholders before it is released. We don't want a situation like this pronouncement of the junior secondary. We want these things interrogated by stakeholders. We are talking about a sector that is also alive to challenges, and in this particular direction, I talk as having participated in meetings of the Education Development Partners Coordination Group involving donors. We need to focus on evidence within the sector. We don't have enough evidence. The presentation today by Zizi Africa actually shows that area is like magic. It is very green. We are not even working scratching the surface. We are not doing that. That area is very green. And unfortunately, sometimes the evidence we have at the moment sometimes works against us. And the case in point is a case between the girl child and the boy child. So a lot of evidence has been preponderated in favor of the girl child. So interventions are following that particular direction. We have a few researchers on the boy child, so there is no evidence generated, so there is nothing going there. At the end of the day, everybody is saying the boy child is also surviving. The question of inclusion is a question that we should constantly have. I was very happy when the question of persons with disability was not ending, because that's a lacuna. Inequalities are rife within the sector. It can be because of marginalized areas, as and semi-arid, it can be gender-based. These needs to be addressed. But the government should also address the issue of sector coordination. When you interact even with the government, you realize part of the problem is that even within departments, they are not talking to each other. Leave alone coordinating the whole sector. So the different departments are not talking to each other, even within the education sector itself. That question within the sector needs to be addressed. Education financing and accountability. One of the things that I'm glad about is that the space is
gradually opening up for us as civil society to be able to undertake accountability initiatives at the county level. And we must take this up because we need to hold the government to account, to remind it that it has got to deliver on a promise. And that promise is that one of providing quality basic education for every child. We're in a complex situation if you look at the education. On the one part, we are planning. On the other part, even as we are planning, we are saying we are working on a report and we're going to give you a way forward. That's complex. Because that limits the extent of the planners. But for now, because the presidential working for party is about education reforms and addresses basic education, CBC, university student, it's the only one that can provide a roadmap for us at the moment. And because of that, I'm looking forward to its recommendations. And I pray that the recommendations will be such that they are going to provide a clear roadmap for us so that every child can get that fundamental basic right.